Tonight in News Extra, AIDS and women. AIDS cases among women are increasing at a rate of 17% a year, making them the fastest growing risk group. And government studies say that increase shows no sign of slowing down. Contributing editor Lewis-Thornton tells us why so many women are at risk and what needs to be done about it.
My name is Lewis-Thornton, and I am a woman living with AIDS.
In February, the hundreds of women in this room made history. We came together for the first ever Women in HIV conference in Washington, D.C. We exchanged ideas, we made a battle plan, and we did it ourselves. You see, for the most part, the government has refused to believe that women get AIDS.
They've not only been in denial, but they have denied us.
One government official admits there have been problems, but says that's changing.
Just in the past few years, women's health in general, and women in HIV in particular, are taken more seriously and are a top priority in the federal government. We've seen some very important changes in the areas of AIDS research and drug development.
But the past cannot be ignored. The Centers for Disease Control did not even include women in the definition of AIDS until January of 1993, a decade after the epidemic began. By and large, women are not included in drug trials. And sadly, most research does not take women into consideration.
And I speak from personal experience. I have been in a study at the National Institute of Health for 9 years. And in the 9 years of this study, they have never taken a pelvic exam.
There has been a reluctance on the part of providers to acknowledge that women might get infected with HIV, and a reluctance in the community to realize that this is a disease that affects women. It was only important women as vector, if they transmitted the virus to men or if they transmitted the virus to children. And there wasn't that understanding that women counted for themselves.
Dr. Marge Cohen is director of the Women and Children HIV program at Cook County Hospital. She says women with HIV and AIDS need to be taken seriously by the medical profession because they have particular problems men don't have.
Some of those gynecological problems include infections like Candida, like trichomonas, like bacterial vaginosis, kind of very common vaginal infections that are more severe, more difficult to treat in women with HIV.
It's one thing to have a yeast infection and use a cream to treat it for 7 days, you're okay. I treat my yeast infections for 7 days, and 3 days later I have another yeast infection, and it's a little bit more painful than the first yeast infection. I've had menstrual cycles that have lasted an hour. I've had menstrual cycles that have lasted 21 days. It's just dysfunctional uterine bleeding.
A recent Cook County study showed that women with AIDS have a lower survival rate than men, often because they don't have the same access to health care or get the same standard of medical treatment as men. And women are generally poorer than men and don't have the same support systems.
For the great part of numbers of women that we see, they're the ultimate primary provider for their own selves, for their children, for other members of their family, and that also will have a big effect on how a devastating disease like HIV affects them.
So how do we meet this devastation head on? By continuing to join together, to raise our voices, and to challenge our leaders.
I hope that Congress and the President and his cabinets and his offices will just embrace this idea that women are too infected and affected by AIDS. It's awesome.
Ray, the epidemic is growing among women. By and large, how are they getting the disease?
We're seeing more and more heterosexual transmission cases.
As opposed to intravenous?
As opposed to, yes.
Now, your next report next week is about friendship and support groups. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, I have an incredible support system, and what you'll get a chance to do is see and meet some of my friends that support me, and to hear about alternative support systems for people who aren't as fortunate as I am, or who just don't feel like that they can just close and talk to their families and friends.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if you have any questions about AIDS, we want to help you. Tonight, we have counselors from 2 groups, Chicago Women's AIDS Project and Test Positive, answering our Interact 2 phone lines. If you or someone you know need help or information about the AIDS, But AIDS said the counselors will be here until 11:30 tonight taking your calls. And that number is 312-664-1818. That's 312-664-1818.
There was a glimmer of sun today. When we come back, we'll find out if it'll make a return appearance. Steve's weekend forecast coming up.